Welcome, everyone, to the Art of Photography series presented by B&H Photo and Skylum, creators of Luminar. Hi, I'm Vanelli, Director of Education for Skylum, and I'm really excited to introduce you to my next guest. The topic today is the art of landscape photography. She's an amazing Canadian photographer who not only is she just in love with her landscapes, but the way she loves to work with people, teach people, and help people. Please welcome Gina Yeo. Hello, Gina.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I want to thank you so much for being here. Again, you know I'm a huge fan of your work. Just talking with you, watching not just your photos itself, but how you capture the photos, and most importantly, how you were able to explain to me in very simple terms how you got the shot. That's what made me fall in love with the stuff that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. All right, so how do we do this? I'll let you take over
Sure,
and you'll share your screen.
I can absolutely do that.
There we go.
All right. Okay, so yes, so today's presentation is the art of landscape photography. And I want to, of course, welcome you. Thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your time with me. I also want to thank Vanelli as well as Luminar for having me here today. To be able to share my passion for landscape photography with you as well. I do want to thank B&H for their event space and for also hosting this presentation. Now, I have a ton that I want to share with you today, so I am going to jump right in and get started. During today's discussion, of course, the topic is going to be landscape photography and my approach to landscape photography. Now, there is a lot to learn when it comes to landscape photography. And when I first started capturing landscape images, I was a fairly accomplished portrait photographer. And I'd been published, I had worked with Nikon, and I was already teaching photographers how to use light. And then I picked up my camera and I went out into one of my favorite places in the world, which are the Canadian Rocky Mountains. And I started taking landscape photos. But I found when I got home, all of my images were falling flat. And it wasn't until I was able to make sense and put everything into a formula that I was actually able to start to really enjoy my time in nature because I wasn't worried about what I needed to do. I set small goals within each of these steps that I'm going to share with you and teach you today. Now, fast forward to today, and as an educator, I continue to come across photographers who are unsure about how to get started in landscape photography, or they just don't really know what technical skills they need to know. And then I also come across photographers who are unsure about how to advance their skills and their creative vision for their photos. So my goal as an educator is to help simplify landscape photography so that you can hopefully identify areas where you would like to grow and then work on improving those areas so ultimately you can create images that fill you with joy. Okay, let's dive in. Today I am going to talk to you about the 4 essential pillars of landscape photography. Now, these 4 pillars are my systematic approach to landscape photography, and they're meant to support you in your success as you go about creating your landscape images. Now, I want you to know that I follow what I teach. So everything that I talk to you here today, about is how I approach my own photography. Let's dive in and get started because, as I said, I have a ton I want to share with you today. The first pillar of landscape photography are the fundamentals. Now, the fundamentals are those things that you should be doing even before you head out into nature. Now, there are two components to the fundamentals, and the first of these is preparing. Now, this might seem like common sense to you, but honestly, I can no longer remember the amount of times I myself, or I've been with another photographer, or I've heard a story from another photographer about not being prepared. If you don't have your batteries or your memory card, or you have neglected to maybe have your filters and your plan was to do a long exposure, well, not being prepared is not going to set you up for success. So let's dive in and take a look inside my camera bag so that you can kind of have a little bit of an idea about how I prepare for my own landscape photography. Now, as we're going through what's in my bag, do keep in mind that I've been a photographer for a long time. I've been a photographer for over 17 years. And so what's in my bag may not necessarily be in your bag. What's inside my bag is due to my own approach and creative vision for my landscape photos. I want you to know that you can get started in landscape photography with the gear you already own. And then as your skills develop, if you want to try something new, then you can go ahead and invest in that. But I want to encourage you to head out into nature and get started with what you already have. Okay, let's take a peek. Inside my camera is my DSLR as well as my mirrorless. My mirrorless is my workhorse camera, and my DSLR is more of a backup. So I will have a telephoto attached to it, or sometimes I'll set up my DSLR just to do a little bit of time lapse while I am working on other things with my mirrorless camera. Inside my bag are also a full range of lenses. So I carry around with me my 14 to 24, my 24 to 70, as well as my 70 to 200. Now, I don't always have these next lenses in my bag, but I usually have access to them. I believe that there is something beautiful to be found in nature, regardless of what your plan is. So sometimes, I'll head out and it'll be a thunderstorm. And afterwards, maybe it just won't be the best light. And what I'll do is I'll take my macro lens and I'll go into the forest and I'll start to look for those macro elements in landscape photography and capture photos of those. Now, I also usually have my 16 to 35 with me. This is for my DSLR in case I want to do any type of time-lapse type of stuff and just have a second backup for a wider angle. And then I also carry with me my 35mm and 14mm Sigma Art lenses. And these lenses are my workhorse lenses for all of my night photography. As you can see, these are both wide aperture lenses, and so they are just ideal for all of my nightscapes. Okay, next up are my tripods, not inside my bag, but attached to the outside of my bag. I carry around 2 tripods usually. One is my lighter weight tripod for all of my hiking, and then my second one is my heavier one for those closer locations, as well as most of my night setups are very heavy, and so I'll use that tripod for my night photography. Always with me are a variety of graduated neutral density filters, and polarizers. Now, I use various different stops of filters depending on the environment that I'm shooting in, as well as my creative vision for my photos. And last but not least are all of those little accessories inside of my camera bag. So that's going to be things like my shutter trigger, my intervalometer, batteries, memory cards, my camera strap, cleaning tools, tripod accessories, safety accessories like bear spray, personal items. Of course, I need snacks and water and extra clothing, and any type of seasonal gear as well. So umbrellas or a rain sleeve for my camera. And of course, I always have my iPhone with me.
Hey, Gina,
Yes,
could you back up for a second? Did you say bear spray?
I said bear spray. So here in the Canadian there are a ton of bears, and they are wonderful creatures, and I love seeing them from my truck or from afar. But I do have
Okay.
bear spray as a safety accessory along with me always, just in case I need to use that to keep myself and
Okay.
whoever I might be with. Yes, absolutely.
Just making sure. I got a little nervous. I got a little nervous after the invite. Now I'm a little nervous about the bear spray, but that's okay.
I'm
Next.
not I'm not spraying people. No spraying people.
All right, good.
All right, just for the bears. Okay, so
Now,
this
I do want to ask you one quick question. I'm glad I saw the 35 in your bag because I have that same lens. I
yes,
have yet to use it. The
yes,
35 millimeter 1.4. I have
mhm,
yet to use it. I wanted to do experiments with portraits in street photography,
yes.
but you say you use that for your landscapes.
So yeah, so this summer I tried this for most of my night images I track. So I have a tracker, and I slapped on my 35 just to give it a try out and just say, well, I use this as my portrait lens back in the day, and I wanted to give it a try for night photography, and I love it. It is super sharp.
Oh,
Coma, as long as I'm stopping down a bit, the coma is almost non-existent, or I can mitigate the issues around coma. So I'm actually really favoring it. It's working for me for my tracked images at night. Absolutely.
good. Thank you. Honestly, I was about to sell it because I haven't really used it. In fact, I haven't even used. I think I've used it not even once. Now I can't even think of the time I used it. But I'm glad there's a possibility for landscape. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Definitely give it a try and see if it has a place in your bag. Absolutely. Okay, so the second component to the fundamental pillar, which is that first pillar, is planning. Um, Please do not underestimate the value of planning. I know that many landscape photographers just like to wander out into nature, and that's okay, but it is important to plan. And yes, I adopted this next little phrase from my son's preschool teacher years and years and years ago. It's true that you get what you get in landscape photography and you don't get upset. But if you are aiming to create a certain type of image, planning is going to go a very long way in helping you capture that photo and your vision for a specific photo. Now, planning is a very in-depth topic, but I do want to leave you with a few tidbits of advice today. At minimum, when you're planning your landscape photography, I want you to take into consideration two separate areas of planning. The first of these is the weather. Now, yes, weather can change at a moment's notice. We all know that. But it's really nice to have an idea of what you're going out into. Because if your goal is to capture, say, the Milky Way, and the weather is forecasting 100% cloudy skies, well, then it might be a good idea for you to either not go at that time or go when the skies are more favorable for your vision for your photography. Second, when planning landscape photography, it's definitely important to consider lighting. Now, I truly believe that a landscape photographer can capture beautiful images at any time of the day. However, the most favored lighting for landscape photography are going to be those hours in and around sunrise as well as sunset. That dynamic color is mind-blowing. And you'll often see a landscape photographer light up and just run around, happy dance time, when you see that beautiful light in an environment. So definitely make an effort to just be aware and plan your outings around good lighting. Now, a few of my favorite planning apps I want to introduce now. So if I had to choose only one app to plan my photography, it's going to be PhotoPills. I use PhotoPills in some capacity in probably almost every single image that I capture. And I also have a few more favorites: Astrospheric, Windy. I use Space Weather Live for Aurora, and then I also really like my Sky Guide. It just kind of helps me find different constellations when I am capturing my night photography. Okay, let's dive in here to that second pillar. Now, the second pillar of landscape photography are the foundations. And these are the different skills and techniques that you can learn and explore as you are growing into the photographer that you want to be. Now, the first foundational area within this pillar is going to be that daylight technique. Now, very often, this is kind of where the majority of landscape photographers start. And that's because it really is often the easiest area and approach to take for the landscape photographer. Now, there are many, many intricacies to learning the art in landscape photography during the daytime. However, I do want to share with you two important considerations for the landscape photographer during the daylight. I use and I highly recommend manual exposure mode. And if you're not using manual exposure mode, that's okay. If you're using a different mode and it works for you, go ahead and continue to do that. However, I'm going to encourage you to think about your potential and what you can create in manual exposure mode when you take full control over the outcome of your photos. Now, I very often get asked, what are my go-to settings for landscape photography? So the exposure triangle settings for landscape photography are actually not that hard in most situations. There's always exceptions. Use your camera's lowest native ISO. So usually that's an ISO of about 100. And then what you want to do is you want to set your aperture to those mid-range apertures. Why? Because mid-range apertures offer a large or wide depth of field or area of focus. And us landscape photographers really do like those sharp images from the foreground through the background of our images. Also, using those mid-range apertures are really going to help mitigate things like diffraction, and they are nice, often nice and sharp apertures to choose for your photos. When it comes to shutter speed, you just set your shutter speed based on your exposure. Okay, I am going to pop over here now to the second important consideration for daylight technique. And that is going to be relying on your in-camera light meter, more so your histogram. The majority of cameras today showcase a histogram on the back screen. Now, why? Well, because histograms are going to help you create high quality and strong technical images. Now, you may be sitting there saying, Gina, I don't want strong images. I just want to show my images on IG to my friends where I go. And I get that. But what I'm actually referring to here is that I want you to actually capture what you see. I know I've done this, so I bet you have too. You're standing outside a beautiful scene in nature, and you take an image and you get home and you realize that your sky is white. You no longer have the detail that your eye saw, or your mountain is silhouetted, or your sea stack, or your pier that you were photographing is all dark and black. Well, becoming friends with your histogram is going to help you create those images that fill you with pride and that you're proud to share, even if you're only sharing on Instagram. Now, histograms, there's a lot of technique or technical information when it comes to a histogram, but I've included a histogram here today for you to just take a peek at and start thinking about. This is a well-exposed histogram, histogram for a well-exposed image. Now you can see here that this histogram is pushing to the right-hand side of the histogram wall, but not climbing the wall. And then the left-hand side of the histogram is not climbing the wall. This means that I've retained all detail from highlights through midtones and shadows in my image. And I know that this is something that I can work with in post-processing in order to complete my image for my photo. Okay. Landscape photography under the beauty of the night sky does require a different type of skill set that is different from daylight photography. Now, there are two important considerations for the photographer that wants to capture images at nighttime. The first is going to be manual focus. It is important to manually focus at night. Occasionally, with advancements of the focal systems of our cameras today, in some situations, you still can use autofocus at night. However, in most situations, you're going to need to manually focus. I choose to zoom in on a star and then manually focus my star until I think I have sharp focus. I pull back a bit and then I tweak. Then I take an exposure and test and make sure that my image is in focus. Now, if you're nervous about using manual focus, there are other techniques and ways to approach focus at night, but I encourage you to just give it a try during the daylight hours and practice manual focus so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable at night if you are focusing your lens manually. The second important consideration for landscape photography at night is going to be, again, manual exposure mode. Very often our cameras are not going to be able to capture a well-exposed image when it is dark in an auto or semi-auto exposure mode. My go-to settings at nighttime are different than my daylight settings. So here in the Canadian Rockies, my ISO is usually around 3200 and anywhere as high as maybe even 8000. Now there are some technical things with respect to where I set my ISO, but what I want to get across here is don't be afraid to bump up your ISO because that's going to help you achieve those good exposed images at night. Now, as for aperture, you're definitely going to want to have a wide aperture to let a lot of light in. So usually the majority of landscape photographers like to be around 2.8 f4, somewhere in there for their nightscapes. And then shutter speed. Well, does shutter speed matter in night photography? Absolutely it does. So if you are seeking pinpoint stars, most cameras today you can achieve almost pinpoint or pinpoint around that 8-second to 15-second mark. Once you go over that, you're going to start to get some star trailing, which is another really fun technique to learn at night. Now, the final foundational skill underneath pillar 2 is going to be creative technique. Now, I could teach a whole class on creative technique in landscape photography. I don't have time for that today, but I do want to share with you my 2 favorite approaches to creative landscape photography. The first is shutter speed. So shutter speed is truly a photographer's most creative camera setting. And the examples that you see here today are a combination of intentional camera movement as well as long exposure using a neutral density filter. My second favorite approach to creative landscape photography is going to be variation in perspective. Perspective can really change the look and feel of a landscape photo. So don't be afraid to experiment with your position to a landscape scene, whether that's low or high, or whether you change your perspective through the choices that you make in your focal length, such as telephoto or a mid-range focal length. All right.
Hey, can I just jump in?
Yes.
Can I jump in just for one moment?
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, because you were mentioning earlier about the histogram,
Yes.
right? So often you hear people say, expose to the right, expose to the right. In your case, your histogram looked really even overall. So what advice would you give people? Because this is one of our questions from YouTube.
Okay.
What do you recommend? Yep. I'm so sorry. Yep, right here.
Okay. So when it comes to the histogram, your histogram is going to look different for every single one of your photos that you capture. And the reason for that is basically your histogram is plotting out light. So depending on how many shadows, how many midtones, or how many highlights you have, your histogram will look different. So the histogram here is for a daytime image because I have a lot of midtones, only a few highlights, only a few shadows. But yes, more so what you're looking for aren't those spikes in your histogram. What you're looking for is you're looking for the stretch or the length of your histogram. And Vanelli, you already highlighted it there with exposing to the right. Absolutely. I expose every single one of my landscape images to the right, because that helps me get really good highlight detail, but it also lifts up my histogram, which preserves shadow detail. And so I'm more likely to only have to take a single exposure instead of having to expose for my highlights and then expose for my shadows.
Hey, thank you.
Very quick explanation. All right, so let's move into that third pillar. Now, the third pillar of landscape photography is composition. When I was a new photographer, I was so excited to be out in nature. I would literally, park my truck, run out into nature, throw down my camera bag, plop down my tripod, mount my camera, and start taking photos. I didn't understand the importance of composition. And then as I look back now with a little bit of perspective and experience, I realized why all of my images were falling flat. And it was because of composition most of the time. Now, you may be wondering, what is good composition? And it is simply this. Composition is the purposeful arrangement of elements present in a landscape setting for strongest visual impact. Now, if you were to enter a Google search and simply put landscape photography and composition, you're going to get a whole bunch of different ideas around rule of thirds, golden triangle, layers, line, rule of odds, texture, all those types of things. Today, I want to give you something a little bit different and some food for thought when you are looking for good composition in your photos. Now I'm going to move through these 6 steps fairly quickly, just because due to time constraints, but write them down or take a screenshot of the last slide so that you can keep these with you and you can think about them in your own landscape photography. Okay, 6 steps to finding solid composition. Here we go. Arrive early. I don't know about you, but I absolutely hate being rushed in nature. Nature is supposed to be soothing, and I find when I am rushing, I'm really not feeling good about my scene and my environment. And the whole point is to enjoy the process of landscape photography. Because I arrive early, this also allows me to explore my environment. And when I'm exploring, this is where I'm looking for those compositional elements. So I'm looking for things like line and layers and rules of third and different types of things that I'm attracted to and draw my attention. And it allows me the time to just think about my final vision or my final intent for my photo. Now, after you've done a little bit of exploring, I highly recommend that you identify a main subject. When someone looks at your image, they should be able to identify the main subject in the frame. If you think about portrait photography, very often the human element is there for our eyes to be drawn to. A landscape photographer doesn't necessarily have that luxury. And so it's really important to set up or compose your image so that you're identifying a main subject. After you have determined what your main subject is, look and identify supporting elements that will strengthen the visual impact of your main subject. That means including certain things and very carefully excluding certain things that might detract from your image. Only now at this time, you should be setting up your camera. I want you to set up your camera and I want you to really pay attention to the edges. Look for things like really awkward cropping or a dead tree cutting across the frame or a reflection that's not intact. Just be aware of the final crop of your image. Now, many people are like, oh, I'll just crop in post-processing, or oh, I'll just straighten my horizon in post-processing. But if you're not paying attention to those details and being careful, you could potentially crop something out in post-processing and have to crop it out and lessen the visual impact of your photo. So just be aware of what's in your frame. And finally, the 6th step to finding solid composition is going to be repetition. Once you've taken your shot, be creative. Look for different things. Look for framing. Maybe you use line in your first compositional setup. This time, look for framing. Try different perspectives. Try horizontal. Try portrait orientation. Just experiment, because it's really surprising to me when I'm on location and I'm capturing a photo. I'm like, yeah, this is the photo. This is, my portfolio image for sure. And then I get home and I'm like, I don't even like that composition. Look at this one that I created. So walk around your environment and experiment and enjoy your experience. Okay, fourth pillar. We've arrived at the fourth pillar. In this next pillar, I'm actually really excited to share with you my post processing. Um, when I first started dabbling in post processing, I truly thought that there was a right or a wrong way to process a photo. And I found myself really frustrated with post processing. I just wanted somebody to show me, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I didn't understand at the time that there is no right or wrong. In all of your post processing, I want you to infuse yourself, your unique vision into your photos. Who cares what anyone else says about your photos? If you love the color and you love the way that you're post processing it, then you go about that avenue. Now, it really doesn't matter what post processing program you're using. Um, the whole point of a post processing program is to help you tweak your image, or maybe for those of you who like to edit your image a little bit more complexly, do that with ease. Now, I teach an approach to post processing that breaks down post processing into easy to approach steps. I so often see my students and photographers that I work with are completely overwhelmed. They don't know where to start, and so they kind of just give up. So I'm going to give you my formula and how I approach my photos today. Okay, so I have developed a 6-step approach to post-processing. The first approach that I take is going to be image prep. Typically, this is very, very basic image prep. Now, image preparation is simply upload of my images, storing them, culling them, cataloging them, and some very basic raw adjustments. Once that's completed, I move into my second step of post-processing. And my second step is going to be all of my construction work. When I am doing construction work to my photos, most of the time it is things like exposure blending, focus stacking, time blending, focal length blending, or perspective blending. Now, what I want to do here is I actually want to pop over into Luminar because I want to show you some of my favorite techniques inside of Luminar that have helped me edit my photos a lot faster and quicker. So bear with me here as I try and switch over. Okay. You should now see Luminar. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I have a couple of images here. In this situation, this is Vermilion Lakes here in Banff, in the Rocky Mountains. And sometimes in landscape photography, we talked about our histogram. There are situations where I need to expose for my highlights and then I need to expose for my shadows because my camera is unable to capture full dynamic range. So in those types of situations, in the past, I have had to do a little bit of exposure matching and a little bit of tweaking and then do some manual blending inside of Photoshop. Well, here inside of Luminar, all I need to do is import my raw file images, and then I simply just select them and I pull them right over here into HDR merge and I say merge. And guess what? Luminar does all the hard lifting for me. You can see that my images now beautifully blended together, and then I can go on in my editing process. Like, how easy was that? I love it. It was awesome. Okay, let me flip back here to my other page. Okay, so you should see the presentation again. Yes?
I
Perfect.
see the presentation. Yeah,
Okay,
we have about 10 minutes. You're doing great.
perfect. No problem. I'll keep running through. Okay. So, my next step in post processing is going to be image cleanup. And when it comes to image cleanup, it's definitely going to be things like spot healing, sensor, minor cropping, transforming, warping, and any type of filling work that I do. Now, I'm going to very quickly here pop back again into Luminar because I want to show you some more magic with this program. It's awesome. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you should see Luminar here. Awesome. So
Yes.
if I go into edit and I come down here into erase, you can see here, let me zoom in here to 100% so you can see this. Okay, you can see that I have a little sensor dot here. In Lightroom or Photoshop, I actually have to manually go in and look through all of my image and clean up those spots. Here, all I need to do is I just need to say remove dust spots. And like magic, come on, Luminar, there we go, it's gone. And so I don't need to go through all of the meticulous looking through my image. I simply just remove spots and they're all gone. Love this feature. Okay, let me pop back on over here to my other slide. There we go. Oh, I can probably move this. Okay. And I will get back here to my presentation. All right. Okay. Now, it's only after these steps that I actually move into my core editing. Now, when it comes to core editing, I would love to be able to show you some of this today, but for time, we just can't. But here is where I do my color work and my dodge and burn, my contrast work, as well as any type of creative work. I do want to show you again one of my very favorite techniques around working with light in Luminar, but I'm going to run through the rest of my workshop here just so I can get through it. And then I'm going to pop into Luminar here at the end if we have time and show you something that I absolutely love about light inside of Luminar. The fourth step that I take in my post-processing is going to be any type of final touches. Now for me, when I'm doing final touches, I do things like clarity work. Sometimes I'll use Orton effect in my images, any type of vignetting or spotlighting, and just some really final tweaking. Once I've done that, I move into my sixth and final step to post-processing my images. And that is simply going to be where I sharpen my image for whatever medium, whether it's the internet or print. I'm saving, I'm exporting, and I'm sharing. Okay, so here are those 6 steps for post-processing that I follow. Now, Vanelli, do I have time to share how I use light in Luminar?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yep,
perfect.
you're right on schedule. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I am pop over here and share my screen. You should see Photoshop. Is that right?
Yep, we see it.
Perfect. Okay, so inside, a lot of photographers do editing inside of Lightroom and inside of Photoshop. That's how I've done editing for a long time. And they're not quite sure how to integrate different programs into their current workflow. Now, I've showed you a couple ways. I didn't get to the focus stacking, but there are so many things inside of Luminar that I absolutely love that really help lessen my effort for my post-processing. And one of my favorite ways is to kind of address light and the creation of light in my images. Now you can see here that I've already edited this image. I have a ton of different edits. I followed my process that I've shared with you here today, but I want to use Luminar to infuse a little bit more light into my photo. So how I do that is I simply I need to kind of merge this image down. So I'm going to do that by hitting Command, Option, Shift, and E on my computer. Let's see if this will work. There we go. Okay. And so I am just combining all of those edits into a single pixel layer. So I have that right here. Now what I want to do is I want to turn this into a smart object. So I'm going to come here and convert for smart filters. So Photoshop is going to go ahead and do that for me. Then what I want to do is I want to go to Luminar Neo. Luminar Neo is then going to open up this image for me, and I'm going to be able to do any type of editing that I want. So for me, I will come to edit here. Now I can go through any of these and make changes in any way, but today what I really want to show you is I want to show you sun rays. I love light. I've taught light for years and years and years, even before I was a landscape photographer. So when I saw this option, I was giddy. I was so excited about using it. And so here is my sun. And what I can do is I can place this anywhere I want in my image. And for this image, I'm actually going to place it outside of the frame. And then I can infuse beautiful light into my photos. And as I move this around, you can kind of get a bit of an idea as to what that might look like. Then from there, I don't have to leave it like this. I can play around as much as I want with different glows, different adjustments, the rays, the number of rays, so that I can really infuse beautiful light in my image. And then here I can work a little bit with warmth when it comes to the light as well. I usually like to bump up my warmth just a tiny little bit. Now, once I'm happy with how that looks, I can make adjustments if I want. So I can go into masking, or most often actually what I do is I just apply this and I go apply. Then all of the edits that I've made, regardless of whether it's just sun rays or if it's anything else that I've done, gets saved right back here into Photoshop. So I can continue on in my post-processing workflow. And then if I notice that, I'm not sure I really like how dark the foreground has gotten here. All I need to do is I just need to come to the mask, and I can come in here with a brush on black, and I can take off that edit. So now you can see here that I've taken off the darkness that Luminar added. And so I've been able to create my own vision for the light in this. And what I love about this is actually, if I've decided that maybe I want to change the light a little bit in this edit, all you need to do is double click on Luminar Neo again. Your image gets pulled up again, and you can add things or tweak things or change things again here inside Edit. And you can work seamlessly between Photoshop and Luminar, and you can use the features inside of Luminar to quickly speed up your edit or infuse your creative vision. Okay, I know we're running here short on time, so allow me to just pop back over to my other screen. There we go. Okay. Very quickly, let's review what you learned today. Today I've shared with you a step-by-step approach to landscape photography that I use to capture my images. I've broken elements of landscape photography down so that you can look at different areas and identify where you may need to do a little bit of learning. And then also what you're doing really well. I think sometimes in landscape photography, landscape photographers, in my experience, can be really hard on themselves. Oh, I didn't do this right, or I didn't do that right. Well, what are you doing really well? Are you really good at preparing? Are you really good at planning? Celebrate your success in landscape photography. Identify the areas where you want to learn as a photographer, and then work on those types of areas and set small goals, little goals for yourself as you move forward in your journey. All right, that brings us to the end of the presentation. I
And this
sincerely
is where we
thank.
could find. I'm saying this is where we can find out more about you, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I
It's
do want to thank everybody first for your time and for being here today. It's been such a pleasure.
awesome. All right. You know what? We have a extra time.
Okay.
So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pick your brain on
Okay.
focus stacking,
Yeah.
because I have to admit, ugh, I hated focus stacking in the beginning because I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And I was afraid our engineers were being pulled away to do more landscape stuff and less of my portrait stuff. So yes, I will admit I was being selfish. And then I got into focus stacking. Oh my God, it's so cool. Um, Focus stacking is really, really cool.
Yes.
So you as a landscape photographer, how do you use focus stack?
So, focus stacking is a combination of in field work and then, of course, post processing. You need to bring those images together. So, I actually, focus stacking in the field, I call it focus bracketing, because what you're kind of doing is you're bracketing focus. And so, there are a number of different techniques when you're focus bracketing. Um, Basically, the whole purpose of it is if you are showcasing elements in your final frame that don't have sharp focus from the front to the back, you want to now focus on certain areas of your image so that you have sharp focus in the front, in the middle ground, and in the background. So I'm gonna, in order to kind of share again, when I'm trying my point here, I'm going to share my screen. So you should be able to see Luminar. Is that right?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. So let me go back to Luminar here and go to my catalog. And I'm going to go here. So you can see these images here. In these three images, I focused for the foreground, which was the bubbles. And then I focused again for the background, middle ground, and then I focused for the background. So I have three different exposures, the exact same scene, where I have set focus at different parts of the image. And then for post-processing, all I have to do here, which I absolutely love about Luminar in Photoshop, this is quite a tedious process sometimes. All I need to do is I need to select my foreground focus, middle ground focus, background focus, and pull it here into focus stacking. And then I hit stack, and Luminar has now brought together my image into a single exposure. And I have sharp focus now here. Here's my image. Let's go over to edit, and then I can maybe just bump this up here to 100%. And you can see that I now have sharp focus from the foreground of my image all the way, just takes a moment to render here, all the way through the back of my image. And
Now,
so,
it, so how did you focus stack? In camera, did you do it?
yes, so in the
You tell
field,
me.
I would have set focus for my foreground, and then I would have set focus for my middle ground, a point in my middle ground, and then I would have set focus for my background. Now, for me, there are some technical stuff involved. You know, very often I'll use photo pills, and I'll use photo pills to kind of help me determine if I'm doing where at what point in my frame is falling out of focus, because PhotoPills has some
Gotcha.
great features to kind of help me, and then I'll make sure that I'm focusing in those types of areas. So yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, you want to stop sharing your screen for a moment so we can see you?
Yes, I will stop
Perfect.
sharing.
Yep.
No problem. There we go.
There you are. All right, good. Yeah. So Dale Scott, which is one of my right hand guys, to help. He was the one who helped me do the two workshops yesterday, or webinars. One with
Okay.
Kelby, one with myself. He says nice structure to the process. I knew he would love that. He loves how you wrote everything down in detail. And then this is just for Neo, where to find focus stacking. If you have the extensions, so click on the little gear, the little puzzle icon on the top right, and then you'll see all the extras or extra extensions. Click on focus stacking, and you can install it from there. All right, that's part of the extension bundle. All right, well, that's awesome. And like I said, I'm personally, I'm excited about the 35mm lens for myself. It sounds funny to say that. And then for the focus stacking, I too, I'm shooting with an Nikon camera. I just pointed on the back of my viewfinder, click, took the shot there. Well, focused it, took the shot. Focused, took the shot. Focused. I tried using in-camera focus stacking. I had horrible results.
I am a manual girl. I really truly believe in manually doing things. So I also, I mean, I have a Nikon, and it does have focus stacking, automatic focus stacking inside. In a pinch, I'll use it, but I do prefer to do exactly just what we've been talking about. Focus on your foreground, move your focal point a little bit back, focus, take your photo, move your focal point back, focus, take a photo, all the way through your image. And I mean, there's other techniques too, if that's not working. But basically, that's most of the time how I do focus bracketing in field. Yes.
Oh, good. So, well, I'm glad, because you're confirming the stuff that I'm doing. So now I feel like I am doing it right. Again, being a portrait photographer, these are things I'm fascinated by with the landscape. And your images, I think we have a couple seconds. We have another minute. Do you have your images readily available? You know what? Your Instagram.
Yeah,
How
so
about
my
we do that?
Instagram is probably the best place to find me. So on Instagram, you can find me at Gina Yeo, so GINAYEO _photography. That's probably the best place to connect with me. You can also connect with me on my website. Really super easy, www.ginayeo.com. Do you want me to throw that there in the chat, or?
Gotcha. And Nick, another one of our guys on Coffee Break, asked a question. Yep, he asked a question: how often do you go out and shoot as opposed to pre-plan?
I go out and shoot all the time. If I have a break, I go. But I'm still doing some sort of planning. So whether that's going to be like, okay, today I'm going to go to Bow Lake, based on weather, based on different factors. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go to Bow Lake today, and I'm going to work on being creative around the water, kind of thing. So I always have, it doesn't have to be like a full step by step plan for like a big trip. But I always have a little bit of an idea as to what I might want to work on.
Now, you do offer workshops, correct?
I do. So I'm currently offering different types of in-person workshops. All my workshops are full for 2023, so this year. My next workshop has a few spaces left in January, and that's based in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. And we're going to be also going to the very popular Abraham Lake, where you see all of those types of frozen bubbles. And you would have seen some of those frozen bubbles in some of my videos here too. And then I'm also working at putting together some more in-person workshops for 2024. And I also teach online, different types of online learning as well. And you can take a peek at those on my website.
Well, you're extremely humble and extremely talented with your photography. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Absolutely awesome. And everyone else, I strongly recommend, check out GinaYeo.com and look at some of her workshops and some of the tutorials and stuff that she's teaching. All right. Well, Gina, thank you so much. And everyone else, thanks so much for joining us. And I can't wait to see you at the next Art of Photography session.